Dean Arnold.
All right. Dean Arnold's podcast. August 20th. Man, we're getting down the road here, man. We've been doing these podcasts now for 2.5 months. Approaching the third month of a daily podcast. Heck yeah. Yeah, it's going good. And today we're going to have a fun podcast, an easy podcast for me. You can see it down below. There it says smoking and cigars. Not the same thing, smoking and cigars. I mean, they can be the same thing, but cigars are far superior than all other smoking, in my opinion. Let me make a note here so I don't forget about it. So usually I've already lit my cigar when we start the podcast, but not today, because today's podcast is about the cigar. So let's light this thing. And if you recall, first month of the podcast, my lighter didn't work very good. Didn't have a very good lighter. Then I had to refill the lighter. So I'm getting used to that whole kind of thing, but that's all right. This cigar, in case you're wondering, is a Oliva 5 Melania, which has probably become my favorite smoke. I mean, if I had any cigar to smoke, I'm probably going to smoke an Oliva, and it has, the best Oliva is a Melania. Those of you in the know, a Padron Aniversario is not going to be far from the pale. But so Oliva is my go-to cigar, especially if I'm running out of money. That's the best for cheap. But there's also this. Those of you who are in the know, CLE is a brand that's probably my favorite brand. It's a moving target because they've had a couple of cigars that became my favorite cigar, and then they discontinued it. Now there's a couple more cigars that I like. I have a hard time finding them anywhere. Shout out to Milan Tobacconist in Roanoke, Virginia, which usually has my favorite CLEs. But anyway, that's what we're smoking today, just in case you were wondering. And we're going to talk about smoking, cigar smoking. Why is it a big deal? That's not that big a deal for most people, but for those who it's a big deal, it's a big deal. And it's kind of an elitist, upper crust, prestigious kind of thing. We'll talk about that. But why do guys like it so much? There's a lot of wannabes, and there's a lot of guys who truly just like it. But why is that? And I've tried to drill into that. I think I've got some ideas. I don't think I have the full answer. That is why questions and comments are welcome to this show. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm running for Congress. Vote for me in November. DeanArnoldForCongress.com is where you give. And I'm bringing sanity to an insane world on this August 20th date. And an insane world says, hey, tobacco, which is like the foundation of North American economics, and this is kind of the whole reason the colonies existed pretty much first couple hundred years. Insanity says, let's get rid of that. Sanity says, let's keep it around. Tradition is always better than innovation. Dumb innovation. I mean, innovation with moderation and a lot of oversight, but generally tradition. Bringing sanity to an insane world. We're going to talk about cigars. Cigars are the bomb. I think so, and I know so. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Cigarettes, not so much. Sorry, cigarette smokers. Nobody feels sorry for cigarette smokers. And then cigar smokers get lumped in along with them, which is a huge mistake. So not many people feel sorry for cigar smokers, but some do. But yeah, cigarettes, yeah. The Tucker Carlson and his brother are kind of keen on cigarettes, which is a little odd to me. And we'll talk about that as we go along here. I think I've covered everything in my preliminary things that I need to talk about. Before we get to the scriptures, let's fear the beard. Okay, we feared the beard. Now we're going to fear the cigar for the rest of this show. But first, let's look at the scriptures of the day. 2 Corinthians chapter 7. Therefore, having these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the Spirit of God. This is a long passage. I'm not going to go through it all, but I'm going to try to twist this scripture into my topic of the day. Probably shouldn't do that, but whatever. Verse 6. He's talking about how they haven't cheated him. You know, they never asked for money. And then in verse 4, he's filled with great is my boldness of speech toward you. Great is my boasting on your behalf. I am filled with comfort. I am exceedingly joyful in all our tribulation. For indeed we came to Macedonia. Our bodies had no rest. Nevertheless, God, who comforts the downcast, comforted us by the coming of Titus. And I'll stop there, but I just want to talk about how he talked about having comfort after a lot of tribulation because their bodies had no rest. That'll come up later in the topic of the day. Mark chapter 1 is our gospel. Another story of them coming out of a synagogue. They entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Same old crew here, both brothers doing the fisherman industry. I mean, that is clearly the heart and soul of Jesus's posse here. You got Peter, James, and John are the big three. We all know that. And Andrew, the first called, is the first one Jesus came to, and he went and recruited Peter. So these four, these are the heart and soul. Simon and Andrew, James and John. Simon, that's Peter. His wife, his mother-in-law, lay sick with a fever. Also Andrew's mother. And they told him about her at once. So he came and he healed the mother-in-law. This is one of the reasons we know that Peter was married, and so that the disciples could obviously be married. Without this passage, we might not know it. Except that Paul in his epistle says, can't the other apostles take a wife? But, and then there's one little traditional line here I'll throw in here. He says, 31, so he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and immediately the fever left her, and she served them. If this was written in a feminist age, I don't think they'd have put in that last line. But anyway, he did heal her. So that's all to say today about the scriptures of the day. Not that big a deal. I think I want to get to cigar smoking is the problem. Okay. Saint of the day, new martyr Cigars at Neapolis in Asia Minor. This is late 1740, during the reign of Sultan Ahmad and Ibrahim Pasha. So now we're dealing with Muslims, general governor of Asia Minor. A decree was issued to kidnap Christian boys and place them in concentration camps. This sounds a little scary, doesn't it? Among them was an orphan named Cigars. One day, however, the judge saw Cigars in the camp, liked him, and took him home to take care of the animals. Thank goodness that's all he had him do. The piety and comeliness of Cigars led the judge to suggest that he become his son-in-law, but only after he became a Muslim. Cigars replied, "No, master, I was born a Christian. I cannot deny the faith of my Savior, nor that of my fathers." Wow. Here's a young kid, got the world, at his beckoning if he just becomes Muslim, because he's, going to become the son-in-law of a judge, and he's going to become rich. He's going to have himself a nice little wife. It's all going to be good. The Ottoman judge found this answer offensive and threatened him with torture, but he refused and confessed his faith. They put him in prison without food for many days. He was nourished by prayer, however. He did not feel any hunger, and he was satisfied with just a little water once in a while, thank God. Then Theocaros ran to the church of St. George, partook of the spotless mysteries. When the judge repeated his offer to let him marry his daughter, Theocaros firmly refused. Then, after horrible torture, they took him an hour's journey from the city of Neapolis, where he was stoned and then hanged at noon on a white poplar tree on August 20th, 1740. Today's August 20th. Why we have to know that he was hanged at noon on a white poplar tree, I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. But today is the day that we honor this young man, Theocaros, who said, no, I ain't marrying your daughter. I ain't becoming a Muslim. I'm going to follow Jesus Christ. Wow. What a great example for us all, Theocaros. Well done. Well done. Okay. Topic of the day, smoking and cigars. First of all, let's talk about the difference between cigars and cigarettes. Cigarettes are 70% chemicals, okay? And we learned in all that litigation in the 70s or 80s or whatever it was, where the tobacco companies lost billions of dollars, that the chemists specifically worked on chemical formulas that were addictive so that they got to make a lot of money. And these 70% chemical cigarettes were not only addictive, but they were really bad for you and caused lung cancer. So cigarettes, not a fan. Not a fan. Cigars, 100% tobacco. Not only that, you don't inhale cigars, you inhale cigarettes. You don't inhale cigars. It's just the pleasure of the smoke coming in and out of the mouth. So that's the first thing for all you Karens out there who I'm talking to. We're going to talk about smoking today. And when we say smoking, we mean cigars. And when we say cigars, we mean tobacco. We don't mean cigarettes and 70% chemicals. So separate that from your brain so you can get out of Karen mode. Now, cigars do have nicotine. Nicotine apparently is good for you. I think there's some people who recommend using the patch, even if you aren't a smoker. Nicotine is a good drug. Not those 70% chemicals, though. Now, the Carlson brothers, Tucker and his brother, Buckley Carlson, I've seen a couple of podcasts where they wax eloquent about cigarettes, and they love cigarettes, and they're kind of going throwback to days when they smoked cigarettes. And I think Buckley took it back up. I don't know if Tucker did. But, you know, I kind of disagree with them on that. I agree with them about everything. They do have a little bit to say about the economics of tobacco and how getting rid of tobacco was just another onslaught on the South and its economy. And there may be something to that. You know, I believe in tobacco. I believe in pure tobacco. There's a brand of cigarettes, kind of hard to find, but American Spirit or Spirits, which is 100% tobacco cigarette. I'm for that. No problem there. But this whole thing of ruining the branch of the economy that basically founded the South is problematic. And I'm sorry that happened. But anyway, nicotine is good. Nicotine, apparently, smokers were the one demographic during COVID that never got COVID. So smoking and nicotine kept people from getting COVID, which is interesting. But a little background for me, you know, I was a kid like everybody else. I was a preacher's kid, so we didn't have smoking in the house. But me and my buddy Mike, we would run around looking for, you know, half-smoked cigarettes that have been thrown down, and we'd mess with that, and they were okay. But we liked smoking. Now somehow we figured out how to smoke pipes. We get the pipe tobacco somewhere, and we do some pipe smoking. But we couldn't always find pipes or tobacco to smoke it in. So we actually had episodes where we would take pine needles, chop them up, find a rolling paper, and we'd smoke some pine needles. They were pretty good. But I guess the reason I'm sharing that story is that there was something in me early on that liked smoking. It's a thing. It's a male thing, obviously. But yeah, smoked me some pine needles. Then what happened is I became a pipe smoker early on, all through high school, college. But it wasn't until I was about 30. I had a news publication where I sold advertising, and a lot of times I would sell a trade as opposed to the cash itself. And I sold a $1,500 trade to Burns Tobacconist here in Chattanooga. So I got $1,500 to spend in the tobacco store. Well, after you buy, $100 worth of pipe tobacco, which is like a big mountain, what are you going to do after that? Well, I figured I was going to have to smoke some cigars. And I have to get some expensive ones, to reach $1,500. So I got a bunch of expensive cigars and started smoking them. Well, I'd always thought I didn't like cigars. I'd tried cigars, Swisher Sweets and all that. It wasn't that I didn't like cigars. I didn't like cheap cigars. I came across quality cigars, and it was a blessing and a curse all at once, because now suddenly I got a new economic challenge. But boy, I like those cigars, and I've been a cigar smoker ever since. So that's my story on cigars. Now, here's the next question. And I've been a bachelor longer than most, which made it a little bit easier for me to smoke, particularly in my house or apartment. Why? Why do men like smoking cigars so much? Before I get to that, let's look at some pictures of cigar smokers, huh? Shall we? There's one. He's a famous cigar smoker, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He screwed up on the vax, and so I'm not so that excited about giving him all that time. Let's get rid of that. We don't want that yet. Who else we got here? Famous cigar smoker. Oh, Groucho Marx. Yeah, pretty well known. Let me go ahead and here's another one. George Burns. You have to be a little bit older to know who that is. Everybody will know who this is. The reason I brought him up, I don't know he's all that famous for smoking cigars, but if you reach a certain level of wealth and fame and achievement, you're smoking cigars. Why is that? Well, there's some connection to success and having reached it and whatever, and cigars. We'll talk about that, I think, a little more in a minute. But Michael Jordan, sure. Does he smoke cigars? Of course he does. He plays a lot of golf, smokes cigars. Who's another famous cigar smoker? This may be the most famous cigar smoker, Winston Churchill. There's a whole line of cigars the size of the cigar called Churchills, because he's so famous with cigars. But he might not be the most famous cigar smoker. I think this one right here. I think he's the most famous. Fidel Castro of Cuba. Absolutely. For those who don't know, the top of the tier cigar manufacturers left Cuba because of all the unrest there a couple decades ago, moved mostly to Honduras, Nicaragua, and the Dominican. And that's where all the great cigars come from now, not from Cuba. There's still a legend of Cuban cigars, but don't be fooled by it. Okay. So famous cigar smokers. Now, why is this cigar thing so big? Why do people like it so much? Well, that is worth talking about. First of all, it's politically incorrect. If you're doing something politically incorrect, it immediately there's a certain group of rebels that's just going to be drawn to it. There's an affinity there. I don't think that's the main reason, but I don't think it hurts. Secondly, it's generally male only. Women generally don't like cigars or cigar smoke, and that makes it kind of a fraternity, a brotherhood. And I think that's a draw that guys like. I brought this up a minute ago. Here's a cigar aficionado cover where they got Demi Moore on the cover smoking a cigar. I don't think so. I don't think she likes cigars. I think she's happy to get paid some money to hold a cigar on the cover of Cigar Aficionado. And there's a few women that are wannabes, but yeah, nah. Why else? Okay. Okay, now we're going to get into the a shout out to some of my smart cigar smoking brothers out there. We got Mike Hunter, Dan Coombs, Mickey Norfolk, Ivy Whitman, Hal Bowling, Kevin Kettenring, a lot of guys like that. My buddy Phil, who's also a golfer. Phil Wyndham too, if Phil Wyndham's out there. Probably the greatest cigar smoker of them all that I've ever known. And Bob Corker's in the Brotherhood of Smokers. I've never sat down and smoked a cigar with Bob Corker. I've been with him when he bought boxes of cigars at the cigar store. But I'd like to smoke a cigar with him. I smoked a cigar with John Meacham, who is the Newsweek editor and Pulitzer Prize winner that endorsed my Chattanooga book. So that's cool. There's a character in my Chattanooga book, one of the great characters of the early 1900s in Chattanooga, Paul Carter. And his job was, and he and his dad had a cigar wholesaling business. They developed Fairland Club and Chattanooga Golf Club and Covenant College as a hotel first. They're big developers, Chattanooga and stuff. Their whole business was cigar manufacturing, cigar wholesaling. Cigars were big in the United States, through, late 1700s, all of the 1800s, early 1900s, big stuff. Tobacco was so big that in the churches, you'd have spittoons in the aisle for people to spit their tobacco juice because they'd be chewing. I don't know if they were smoking in church. They probably were. But anyway, so back to the question, why? Why do we like smoking? Well, first of all, it's an oral pleasure. And I think that's at the top. I don't know if it's the top, but it's at the top. We don't inhale like you inhale cigarettes. We just breathe the smoke in, enjoy it on the inside of the mouth, and blow it back out. But it is an oral pleasure. The stick itself around your lips, you get a lot of nicotine that way, and then you blow in the smoke and you blow out the smoke. There's an oral sensation there. So that whole thing, oral sensation, sure, that's got to be one of the reasons. Well, there's a lot of things that give you oral sensations. I mean, chewing gum, sucking on a lollipop, all that kind of stuff. Why is it that the cigar is so popular? Well, there's a bittersweet aspect to it. I don't think this is the main reason, but I just was trying to list all the reasons I could think of. And it's like coffee. Coffee's a strange drink. I mean, it ain't sweet like hot chocolate. It's not sweet like tea with all that sugar in it. Although tea has an analogy if you don't put sugar in it. It's not a Dr. Pepper. It's not a Coke. Coffee is bitter. Coffee is, in a sense, kind of yuck. It's kind of like, what's going on here? But we love it because we're complex, ironic human beings, and we like things good and bad, complex, ironic. We do. And we like coffee for some strange reason. Well, there's a harshness to the cigar. I mean, a good cigar is not harsh, but there's nevertheless smoke coming in and out of you has a harshness to it, and it's hot and it's not sweet. Although there's some spices that can be put in certain cigars that kind of sweeten it up a little bit, but not really. So that harshness, just like coffee, there's something going on there. There's a feeling of manliness. There's a feeling of, dealing with the nitty gritty of life. So I think that's the reason. Questions, comments, welcome. And we'll get to, before I get to my main punchlines, maybe I'll just bring it up here. Okay. My wife loves the smell on me, but wouldn't ever pretend she wanted to try it herself. Okay. Duke of the Dudes. I love the name, Duke of the Dudes. I would say yes. Thank you. Yeah, any honest woman is going to say she don't want to try it for herself. And there's a few wannabe women who try to get in there and be cool, and it's pretty rare. And I've never believed it myself. Maybe once or twice there's been a real woman who really wanted to smoke cigars. I just don't know. But I'm glad she likes the smell on you, because that's usually not the case. My dad, great guy, man's man, whatever, fundamentalist preacher. We didn't grow up with cigars or cigarette smoke, but later, we were around cigarette smoke all our lives. You go to a high school basketball game, you go outside back in the 60s and 70s, and there's just smoke everywhere. He never had a problem with it. He never said anything about it. But later in life, when I'm coming home after having smoked cigars on my trip to his house in Orlando, he suddenly has become, sensitive to the slightest bit of cigar smoke and complaining about it, saying his eyes are watering. And it's like, oh, come on, give me a break. It was hard to watch. But anyway, that kind of thing does happen. Okay. Why? Why do we love? More questions and comments appreciated. Why? Why? Oh, we got more comments. I missed it. Okay. Thanks, Dean. I've been lighting up cigars every morning since I started watching your live streams. Oh, I got people smoking earlier now because they're going to light up while I smoke. Ooh, love it. Oh, yes. Don't tell me I'm not an evangelist. Okay, appreciate that. That's from Talks Tests. These are both brand new commenters as far as I know, and I appreciate you guys chiming in. Why is cigar smoking such an attraction? Why? I've been baiting you on this for a while, and I like the way that's developed. I'm going to say I've got two reasons, and they sort of work together. In Latin, the word spiritus, and in Greek, the word pneuma, and Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and their mentor, what's their mentor's name? I forgot. He pointed out that the word in Latin and Greek, spirit, breath, and wind, it means all three things. So spiritus in Latin and pneuma in Greek mean spirit, breath, and wind. Okay, and so I'm just going to propose to you this a bit far off theory that when you're smoking a cigar, you're dealing with your breath, your wind, and your spirit, and perhaps the Spirit of God. That's what's going on there. That's why it's so kind of primal. That's why it's so kind of, you feel like you're communing, with higher forces, because that word means spirit, breath, and wind. Now, leave out the wind part. I wrote a movie script about C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien, and there's a lot of imagery in there about smoking, because they were smoking fiends, and how it has to do with the spirit and the spirit of love around them and all that kind of stuff. And it's good stuff. But I think there's something going on in a communal way with our spirit and the spirit when we smoke. All right. You think I'm crazy? Probably am. The other thing I have to offer on this is cigar smoking. There's a lot in the Bible and in reality about sitting down is what you do when you rest. Jesus sits down at the right hand of the Father. Okay, we have a lot of sitting down with kings, after they, everybody else sits down, they sit down and come to rest. And when they're at rest, they also do judgment. And I think, usually when we smoke cigars, we sit down. Sometimes you have to stand around, but it's a sitting down to rest. Remember, we had that word rest in the epistle of the day today. But, in Jesus, Hebrews, it talks about entering into your rest. Jesus enters into his rest. But this is after an accomplishment. This is after having won a battle. This is after a series. This is a day of hard work. You sit down and rest and you smoke that cigar, and it's all kind of works together. And it's a great way to cap off the day. By the way, I've never been an alcohol guy. I think alcohol in many ways serves some of the same functions I'm talking about here. And alcohol is in the Bible, so it's a little easier to talk about it. I never liked alcohol. I grew up in a teetotaling family, and I thought beer tasted like pee, or smelled like it anyway. I don't want anything to do with beer. And when I got to be older, 18, 19, 20, I could head to the bars and all that kind of stuff. I never understood the bar scene. What the heck is this? You're sitting at this bar. There's someone on either side of you. That's all you get. And everybody's facing the same direction. They're not facing each other. And if you wanted to talk to each other, you hardly can because the music's so loud. And then there's this whole set of rules, like I buy the drink for you. And if you buy the drink for me, maybe I'll talk to you, and maybe things will lead from here to there. I didn't know any of those rules. I didn't know the bar scene. I didn't like the bar scene. I still don't like the bar scene. And I really still don't like alcohol that much. I'll drink a little bit here and there, but it's not my number one thing. I've always loved smoking and cigars. But I got off track just talking about how I think sitting down to rest with a glass of alcohol is a pretty ancient tradition. You can find it in the Bible. And I think cigar smoking serves the same purpose. A lot of guys do both. But it's not in the Bible. That's interesting, though. It's a New World thing. I mean, we didn't really have smoking. I guess you had the Turkish people who do the hookahs. And I'd probably do a hookah if I didn't have tobacco. But this tobacco thing, it was discovered in the whole New World deal, like with tomatoes and, other kind of things that we didn't have until we got to the New World. And it's a New World phenomenon. And you're not going to find it in the Bible, so whatever. But sitting down to rest, communing with the Spirit, your spirit, God's Spirit, who knows what it is. There's a whole thing there at the end of the day, usually at the end of an accomplishment, after you've had a baby, you buy cigars for everybody, retirement party, whatever. So that's usually where you see the cigars, and that's pretty cool. And I'd say for smoking, one of its major weaknesses is it's not in the Bible. I'm sorry about that, but it just didn't. Okay. I think I've said everything I can say about smoking and smoking cigars. It's a wonderful habit for me. Hobby. I'd say a hobby. I got golf and I got cigars. The older I get, golf gets a little bit harder. I think I'll be able to smoke cigars a lot longer than I'll be able to play golf. As men, most of our hobbies go away. And, as men, as we get older, there's just not left much for us to do, but smoking, you can do that. Oh yeah. So it's a wonderful hobby. I'm glad to have it. It's not the end of the world. If you told me I couldn't smoke the rest of my life, I'd be bummed, but I mean, my life wouldn't be over. Now, if you told me I couldn't drink alcohol the rest of my life, I was like, oh, whatever. Okay. I don't need alcohol. But if you told me I couldn't smoke, that'd be frustrating. I wouldn't like that, but still, it wouldn't be the end of all things. But I hope I'll be able to do it for a long time. All right. I think I've said it all. No more comments, no more questions. Let's get out of here with the today's song. It is August 20th. Vote for me in November. DeanArnoldForCongress.com. Need some donors. I just bought 100 yard signs. I need to buy some more. I need to buy some advertising for this podcast, which is next on the list. So please do that for me. Like, share, and subscribe. bringing sanity to an insane world. Come on, guys. Smoke some cigars. All right, here we go.
Dean Arnold.
August 20th.